For centuries, the Mangekyō Sharingan has been framed as a curse, a supernatural stain on the Uchiha bloodline, born from grief, hatred, and emotional collapse. But when we examine the evidence through a forensic lens, a different picture emerges. The Mangekyō is not a mythic punishment. It is a biological singularity, a rare evolutionary event triggered when a new Uchiha's physical hardware and psychological software synchronize under extreme stress. In this framework, the Mangekyō becomes an emergency override system, activated only when the brain reaches a threshold where survival, identity, and purpose collide. The awakening of the Mangekyō is governed by three interlocking biological filters. First, neural hardware, a highly specialized analytical cortex capable of processing what we call Indra-Frequency chakra, a bandwidth of spiritual energy only a fraction of the clan can access. Second, cognitive software, a psychological shift from passive trauma to active determination. This is not grief alone. It is the moment the brain rewires itself to solve an existential crisis, a decision to act, not merely to suffer. Third, metabolic cost, a catastrophic trade-off. The Mangekyō grants god-tier ocular abilities, but only by consuming the user's cellular integrity. Every activation is a withdrawal from the body's life force. When we audit the lives of history's most prominent users, from Madara to Sasuke, a striking pattern emerges. The Mangekyō is not random. It is custom built by the user's brain, engineered to fulfill the exact psychological need present at the moment of greatest determination. Each Mangekyō ability is a biological solution to a personal crisis. Shisui needed control. Itachi needed precision. Obito needed escape. Sasuke needed power to rewrite fate. Their eyes reflect their resolve. Understanding the Mangekyō as a biological event, not a mystical curse, changes everything. It explains why so few Uchiha ever awaken it. It explains why it leads to blindness. And it explains why the clan was feared, not for their eyes alone, but for their unparalleled ability to shape reality through the force of a focused will. The Mangekyō is not the product of hatred. It is the product of evolution, a rare moment when the human body and spirit align to break their own limits. If trauma is the key, why wasn't the Uchiha district filled with Mangekyō after the Great Ninja Wars? This is the central paradox of the Uchiha. Generations endured unimaginable loss, yet only a handful ever awakened the Mangekyō. The answer lies not in emotion alone, but in biology, a threshold that separates a shinobi from a god. Think of the Uchiha like a high-end sports car manufacturer. In the beginning, every model was a hand-built with a V8 engine, Indra's pure genetic code. But as centuries passed and the clan expanded, most descendants were born with four-cylinder engines. They look like sports cars on the outside, the Sharingan, but lack the internal cylinders to reach Mangekyō speeds. No amount of trauma could transform a four-cylinder into a V12. The Mangekyō was not an emotional inevitability, it was a genetic rarity. The Uchiha clan is a biological tree. At its root stands Indra Ototsuki, glowing with pure signal strength. But as the branches spread, the genetic code diluted. Madara and Izuna carried a concentrated version of the Indra DNA, while the commoner branches carried only fragments, gray echoes of the original mutation. This explains why only select few individuals, Shisui, Itachi, Sasuke, could breach the biological ceiling. They were not simply traumatized. They were born into branches where the Mangekyō segment of the DNA helix still existed. Within the Uchiha genome lies a hidden instruction manual, a recessive sequence we call the Mangekyō segment. Most Uchiha lack it. They can awaken the Sharingan, but their DNA does not contain the blueprint for ocular singularity. Only those born with the rare recessive alignment can cross the biological threshold. This is why trauma alone is insufficient. Without the genetic key, the door to the Mangekyō remains locked forever. We've always been told that the Mangekyō Sharingan is triggered by emotion, a moment of unbearable grief, a trauma so deep it rewrites the soul. But if that were true, the Uchiha district should have been a city of gods after the Great Ninja Wars. The reality is far more clinical. The Mangekyō isn't just an emotional state. It is a double recessive genetic mutation, a rare biological alignment that only a fraction of the clan ever possessed. Think about eye color. Brown eyes are dominant, blue eyes are recessive. For a child to have blue eyes, they need the right instructions from both parents. Now consider red hair, one of the rarest genetic expressions on Earth. Two parents with jet black hair can still give birth to a red-headed child because 3 generations back there was an Irish grandfather. The MCR1 mutation stays hidden, traveling silently through the bloodline until the perfect biological lottery occurred. The Uchiha are no different. Indra Otsutsuki was the original redhead, the first carrier of the pure, undiluted Mangekyō mutation. As the Uchiha clan expanded and outcrossed with other families, that Indra DNA became the hidden Irish grandfather of the clan, a recessive trait buried beneath dominant Sharingan genes. Most Uchiha inherited the standard Sharingan gene, reliable, powerful, but missing the biological instruction manual for the Mangekyō. To awaken the Mangekyō, you don't just need trauma. You need to be that 1 in a million child born with both recessive Indra alleles clicking back into place. This is why Mara was so obsessed with lineage. He wasn't simply a clan purist. He understood, perhaps instinctively, that the Mangekyō was a diluting resource. Every time an Uchiha had a child with a distant branch or an outside family, the odds of producing a god-tier shinobi dropped. And this is why Itachi, Sasuke, and Shisui stand apart. They weren't just lucky. They were the rare biological redheads of the Uchiha, the few whose genetic makeup still remembered Indra. To understand why Shisui Uchiha became the genetic lottery winner of his era, we must examine his lineage through the lens of lineage isolation. If the Mangekyō is a recessive redhead gene, then Shisui is the clearest proof that certain Uchiha branches function as genetic islands, pockets where the Indra signal remained highly concentrated while the rest of the clan diluted over time. Shisui was not a statistical accident. He was the product of a preserved bloodline. Shisui wasn't just another Uchiha. He was descended from Kagami Uchiha, one of the few clan members trusted by Toborama Senju, a man notoriously wary of the Uchiha volatility. Toborama described Kagami as possessing a spirit of fire that transcended the clan's curse of hatred. In our forensic framework, this is not merely a compliment, it is a neurological marker. Kagami has likely carried a high-purity Indra signal, a genetic configuration that resisted the emotional instability common in diluted branches. Because Shisui inherited this lineage directly, he did not need a random mutation to awaken the Mangekyō. He was born into a noble branch where the Mangekyō alleles were still dominant, a branch that preserved the recessive Indra code while the rest of the clan drifted genetically outward. Using our Irish grandfather analogy, Shisui's parents did not need to possess the Mangekyō themselves. They only needed to be carriers of the recessive Kagami allele, the trait. If both parents carried this hidden gene, then Shisui had a 25% chance of being born with the biological hardware required for Mangekyō activation. Most Uchiha were SS, standard Sharingan only. SM, carriers who could never activate the mutation, or MM, the rare expression capable of ocular singularity. Shisui belonged to that final category. He was the redhead child of the Uchiha, the rare genetic expression whose DNA still remembered Indra. Before Shisui ever awakened the Mangekyō, he was already feared for one technique, the body flicker. For most shinobi, body flicker is simply speed, a burst of chakra to the legs, a blur of motion, a momentary displacement. But Shisui's version was different. His shunshin produced after images with substance, phantoms so convincing they could deceive even trained Sharingan users. This was not merely agility, this was neurological overclocking. To create after images with substance, the brain must process spatial data, muscle signals, and chakra flow at speeds far beyond normal human limits. Shisui's nervous system was already operating at Mangekyō level bandwidth before his trigger event. Most Uchiha attempting this level of acceleration would suffer a system crash. Optic nerve strain, cortical overload, or even temporary blindness. But Shisui's anatomy was different. His lineage had pre-adapted him for the Mangekyō. His brain was built to withstand the massive chakra spikes that would cripple other Uchiha. In biological terms, Shisui was Mangekyō ready long before his eyes ever changed. Shisui Uchiha is our patient zero for the noble branch theory. While the rest of the clan was becoming genetically diluted by the piece of the hidden leaf, Shisui's lineage, the Kagami line, acted as a genetic vault. He didn't just get lucky with his eyes. He was the result of a concentrated genetic pocket that kept the interest signal at 90% strength, while the rest of the village was operating at 10%. If Shisui Uchiha represents the purebred success story, then Obito Uchiha is the biological anomaly, a case that defies expectation and rewrites the boundaries of Uchiha physiology. To his peers, Obito was a failure, a late bloomer, a boy who struggled with basic coordination and awakened his Sharingan long after his rivals. But from a shinobi anatomy perspective, Obito is the most important subject in our entire audit. He shows us what happens when a standard Uchiha carries the hidden recessive gene and then receives a biological supplement that changes everything. Even in a commoner branch of the Uchiha, the Punnett square still applies. Obito's parents were almost certainly SM carriers, standard Sharingan users who unknowingly held the recessive Indra allele. Obito was most likely an SM carrier as well. Obito was a late bloomer because his analytical cortex was standard, SM. He struggled to even manifest the base Sharingan, and his hardware certainly wasn't built to survive a Mangekyō awakening. The Sharingan was there, the Mangekyō pathways were there, but they were dormant, waiting for a surge of energy powerful enough to ignite them. That surge came from a source no Uchiha had ever merged with before. This is the turning point of Obito's biology. Before his Mangekyō ever awakened, his right side was reconstructed with Zetsu matter infused with Hashirama cells. Hashirama cells are the purest expression of Asura's yang energy, a reservoir of vitality so immense that it can even sustain the Rinnegan itself. In shinobi anatomy, the Mangekyō is a high-voltage mutation. Most Uchiha bodies burn out under the strain. Their optic nerves degrade. Their chakra systems collapse. But Obito's new body was different. The Hashirama cells acted as a biological steroid, a heat sink, a power supply, and a regenerative engine. By the time Obito witnessed Rin's death, his trauma wasn't hitting a standard Uchiha body. It was hitting a body supercharged with senju regeneration. The result was a violent awakening, a transformation so extreme that it rewired his entire nervous system on the spot. This is why Obito could use Kamui immediately, without the usual recovery period that cripples most Mangekyō users. His body had already been rebuilt to withstand the impossible. Obito's Mangekyō ability, Kamui, is arguably the most powerful ocular technique in the series. But why? Because Obito was a standard Uchiha who bypassed the dilution of his lineage through Senju DNA, his Mangekyō didn't just activate, it overclocked. And unlike every other Mangekyō user, Obito never went blind. For nearly 20 years, he used his Mangekyō without the eternal upgrade, because the Hashirama cells were constantly repairing the microscopic damage to his optic nerves. His body became a self-healing engine, a biological machine built to sustain a mutation that should have destroyed him. Obito Uchiha proves that the Mangekyō isn't just for the elite. He was a genetic carrier who hit the lottery, but he lacked the noble hardware to handle it. It wasn't until he merged with Hashirama cells that his biology became god tier. He didn't just awaken his eyes, he turned his entire body into a life support system for a mutation that should have killed him. If Obito represents the anomaly, then our next subject represents the pinnacle of biological purity. To understand Itachi Uchiha, we must confront the most critical biological principle in this entire audit: reincarnation magnetism. In shinobi anatomy, Indra Otsutsuki's spirit did not choose a host at random. To house the spiritual energy of a demigod, the vessel must be Indra-compatible, a body with the highest concentration of Indra's genetic signal. This means that Fugaku and Mikoto Uchiha were not merely clan leaders. They were the custodians of the purest genetic reservoir in the entire village. Their household was the biological epicenter of the Uchiha Clan, and Itachi was its masterpiece. While the rest of the Uchiha drifted towards genetic dilution, the main house preserved its lineage with remarkable precision. The strongest evidence is Fugaku Uchiha himself. He awakened the Mangekyō during the Third Great Ninja War, a rare feat in the modern era. This single data point proves that the Mangekyō alleles, MM, were dominant within the household. Itachi did not become a prodigy. He was born with 100% hardware compatibility, a biological temple built to house the Mangekyō mutation. His genius was not a surprise. It was an inevitability. Why was Itachi so naturally proficient with his Mangekyō? Why could he wield Amaterasu and Tsukiyomi with surgical precision from the moment they awakened? The answer lies in the sibling buffer phenomenon. Itachi shared nearly identical DNA with the future reincarnate of Indra, Sasuke. This meant Itachi's nervous system was already calibrated to handle Otsutsuki-level chakra output. Most Uchiha experience agonizing strain when their Mangekyō awakens, violent transformations, neural overload, or temporary blindness. But Itachi's brain was factory tuned to the highest possible frequency. His body was built to withstand the divine. This is where Itachi becomes a unique case study. Sasuke possessed the advantage of Indra's actual chakra, the soul. Itachi possessed only the DNA, the hardware. And yet, Itachi's Mangekyō is nearly as potent. This makes him the perfect human variant, the absolute peak of what the Uchiha bloodline can produce without divine intervention. His eyes were so powerful that even severe illness cannot diminish their precision. Itachi represents the purest expression of the Uchiha genome in recorded history. Itachi Uchiha wasn't just a prodigy, he was a biological inevitability. When you look at the Uchiha main house, you aren't looking at a family, you are looking at a genetic vault. Because this line was destined to produce the next reincarnate of Indra, Itachi was born into a body already 90% compatible with god-tier power. He had the red hair of Indra, but in the most refined, high-definition form. If Itachi represents the perfect human variant, then our next subject represents the final evolutionary endpoint. If Itachi Uchiha represents the perfect human variant, then Sasuke Uchiha is the terminal sample, the moment where biological hardware finally reunites with the original software of the Uchiha bloodline. Itachi inherited the genetic red hair. Sasuke inherited the genetic code and the ghost of the original Irish grandfather, Indra Otsutsuki himself sitting in the driver's seat. Sasuke is not merely an heir, he is the restored source. Why does Indra's soul choose Sasuke? In shinobi anatomy, a reincarnated soul requires a specific bioelectric frequency to anchor itself to a physical vessel. Most Uchiha are like radios tuned to 98.1 FM. Indra's soul broadcasts on 108 FM. But Sasuke's main house lineage preserved the exact neural architecture, the perfect antenna required to receive that 108 signal. This is why Sasuke's growth was so explosive once his Mangekyō awakened. He wasn't just using his own chakra. He was tapping into the primordial source frequency, the original Indra signal restored to full strength. Sasuke is our primary case study for the eternal Mangekyō Sharingan. In real-world biology, foreign tissue is usually rejected. In Uchiha physiology, the Mangekyō is even more sensitive. Transplanting it into a distant relative often kills the eye entirely, but Sasuke and Itachi shared near identical genetic markers from the main house. Their analytical cortex signatures were indistinguishable. To Sasuke's body, Itachi's eyes were not foreign organs, they were upgraded parts. This allowed the two interest signals to stack, creating a perpetual chakra loop that halted cellular decay and prevented blindness entirely. The EMS was not just a transplant, it was a genetic reunion. Sasuke's Mangekyō ability, Amaterasu paired with Kakatsuchi, represents the highest level of ocular motor control in the entire Uchiha lineage. Itachi could start fire, Sasuke could sculpt it. This level of neural granularity suggests that the Indra software provides a resolution even Itachi's perfect hardware could not reach. Sasuke wasn't just stronger. His biological HUD was operating at a higher resolution, a divine interface restored to its original settings. Sasuke Uchiha is the biological conclusion of a thousand-year experiment. He is the moment the Indra signal returned to 100% strength. By combining the main house genetic purity with the actual spiritual presence of the progenitor, Sasuke bypassed every limitation of the Uchiha clan. He isn't just a ninja, he is the restored source. We have successfully audited the hardware. We know that without the specific mm-genotype, the Mangekyō is a biological impossibility. But the engine is useless without the ignition. Why do some Uchiha with the perfect DNA never awaken the eye, while others, like a young girl in a time of peace, reach out the singularity in a single moment of desperation? In part 2, we will move from the blood to the mind. We will audit the determination singularity, the specific neural realignment of Sasuke and Sarada Uchiha, and the brutal metabolic wall that begins to rot the optic nerve the second the power is unleashed. Click the next report to enter Filter 2, the psychological software. The audit continues now.